Hey guys, welcome back. We haven't gotten a whole lot in the way of new polling out over the past few days, but there are 6 polls I wanted to touch on in this video. 2 of them looking at the national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary, showing that head-to-head matchup between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and then also some states that are upcoming here on March 10th. Got a couple of polls out of the state of Washington, a poll from Missouri, and then also a little bit later than that, we then go in to the state of Florida, which doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be all that good for Bernie Sanders. At least that's what we've been seeing from him in the Southeast. The polling hasn't been great from him in Florida, and it looks like that trend might continue. But I want to start here with the national polls. This one coming from the Morning Consult. We can see the most up-to-date numbers that we have thus far, with Joe Biden leading the pack at 54% of support. And it's kind of interesting to see how things have consolidated with a number of individuals bowing out of the race and getting behind and endorsing other candidates, specifically with Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, as well as Bloomberg getting out of the race and getting behind Joe Biden. So this was a sample size of 1,390 respondents. It did come out about 3 or so days ago. I'm looking forward to seeing what the updated Morning Consult numbers say before heading into the March 10 elections that we have a number of states going to be participating on that day. But then we can see Bernie Sanders in second place at 38%. Tulsi Gabbard, for whatever reason, still in the race there at 2 percentage points. And then scrolling down and taking a look, and you can see how the perception of the voters has changed rather significantly, with Joe Biden performing well in the South Carolina primary, and then on Super Tuesday, the voters here saying the best chance to defeat Donald Trump. Joe Biden fell off a cliff given his weak start in Iowa, New Hampshire. He was able to build a little bit more so off of the second place finish in Nevada towards the South Carolina primary. And then we can see a big boost up there heading after Super Tuesday, where he's now up to 51%, where Sanders has seen his numbers more or less kind of hover around a similar area, but has taken a little bit of a step back here over the past couple of weeks with that electability narrative. And then moving over to a national Ipsos poll, and again, this is another one of these national polls that's showing us head-to-head between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and this one also came out a few days ago. I'm looking forward to seeing some updated numbers from this resource as well, but it actually showed a relatively competitive race between Biden and Sanders, where all registered voters, Biden had a 10-point lead, 55 to 45. All respondents, it was actually just a 4-point gap between Sanders and Biden, 48 to 52. And then you had the same split between Democratic registered voters, a 10-point split there, and then independent registered voters, it was just a 4-point lead for Joe Biden, 48 to 52. So then moving over to a couple of polls out of the state of Washington, this one coming from Survey USA, a sample size of 550 likely voters. It was taken when Elizabeth Warren was still in the picture. She was bringing in around 10 percentage points, and then it was really competitive between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, with Joe Biden around 36%. And Bernie around 35 percentage points. Now, Washington should be one of the better states for Bernie Sanders. It's out west. It's very progressive. He has the endorsement of Pramila Jayapal, for instance, who is a congresswoman from the state of Washington. So there's a lot of advantages that Sanders should bring into a contest like out there in Washington. If he's not winning something like this kind of state, then it would indicate that we're starting to get close to the end of this competitive primary season, and Joe Biden might run away with things because, again, like I said, Washington figuring to be one of the more potential favorable states towards Bernie Sanders, and he needs to perform well in that one if he's going to have a chance going forward. And then another Washington poll, this one coming from Data for Progress, a sample size of 737 likely voters. And again, it was taken with Warren still in the picture, but Warren and Gabbard in this instance weren't registering much in the way of support. And it also showed a pretty competitive race at the top, with Biden at 47% and Bernie Sanders at 44%. And then we had a Missouri poll from Emerson, and it actually showed a little bit more of a competitive race than I would have expected. It is just one data point to go off of, and perhaps it isn't as close as this when we actually get to Election Day, but something that the Sanders camp can perhaps try to build a positive narrative off of. At least they're only trailing Biden in the state of Missouri by 4% in this instance, with Biden at 48%, Sanders at 44%, and this is a sample size here of 425 likely voters. And then we can see Tulsi Gabbard down there at 2 percentage points. And also in this Emerson poll, they asked individuals their preference on healthcare, and maybe this is a positive sign for Bernie Sanders going into the state of Missouri, where 43% were for Medicare for all. and 27% for the public option, 10% keeping things as they would be. But then again, I guess you could say this about a lot of these states across the board. The Democratic primary voters have favored Medicare for all in contrast to other types of systems. And even with that being the case, Bernie Sanders hasn't been able to win many of those states. So take that for what it's worth. And then to wrap things up, we have a poll here out of the state of Florida. It was released on March 5th, but it was taken when a number of these candidates were still in the race, so take this for what it's worth, but it shows Biden absolutely running away with this thing at 61%. The sample size here of 1,882 likely voters in the state of Florida, and then Bloomberg was actually in second at 14%. He steps out of the race, endorses Biden, so you'd think a decent amount of that vote might go over to Joe Biden, with Bernie Sanders at just 12% in this instance, with Warren at 5%, and then it doesn't really matter who the rest of the answers were in this poll. So you can see that Biden running away down there in the Southeast, and that's been the case thus far with states like South Carolina and Alabama, where Joe Biden absolutely crushed it. You would expect him to continue to do well in this region of the country going forward. So that's going to wrap this one up, guys. Hopefully we continue to get more new polling information out over the coming days before heading into the March 10th elections. And I'm going to be making my final predictions, and I'm going to go from predicting the top 3 to now just predicting the top 2, now that it's basically just a head-to-head matchup there at the top between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. The states coming up on the 10th would be Michigan, Missouri. You also have North Dakota, Idaho, Washington, Mississippi, and Democrats abroad. So I'll probably be releasing those predictions sometime later on tomorrow. And then, of course, I'll be back here again to recap exactly what happened in those states. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you back here for my next video.